things that for question number one, there was a feeling of.
You want to go up there and see?
No, she's doing the writing.
No, but it's.
Oh, you can't hear me? No.
The acoustics in here kind of tough.
Pop number one. Listening to the speakers, I was left feeling hopeful that change is coming, however frustrated that I don't have the words to use to talk to people about this. I felt challenged by the fact that it's a national problem. Felt hopeful that the obstruction in Congress might stop after this presidency is over. Anger at the lead poisoning in the water in Flint that was a result of cost-saving measures. And we talked about how those cost savings are minuscule to what the cost in the future, both monetary and in human lives and intellect and things of that sort. There was an idea that here in Oregon we're seeing white males feeling the loss of their entitlements because of the movements. And we felt challenged by the fact that some of us have had sheltered lives and realizing that we have much to learn on this aspect. You want me to go on to number two, or do you want the next group to do one first?
No, go ahead. Do number one first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good, you ready? Stop. Okay. Thank you.
How did I feel? One reaction was disconnected, or felt that the approach was too ivory tower and too academic and not much story that we needed to connect and orient ourselves. So we ended up trading a lot of stories in our group. Uncomfortable, don't know how to address or approach people of color. Relieved because the transparency of the discussion brings hope. Frustrated, not knowing what's going on in our own government. Angry or distressed that a lot of discussion was about Flint, which has running water, even though it's polluted. And my experience with the Navajo Reservation is that at least they have water, and a lot of rural people on the reservation have to truck in their own water 30, 40, 50 miles. So children who grow up in homes without running water are 11 times as likely to have a serious illness or pneumonia, experience pneumonia before they arrive at school. Let's see, the feeling of not having enough information about the situation here in Oregon as far as educational problems, built-in discrimination in the school system here. disparities in Oregon between our quality of our education and other states. And, another frustration was where are the jobs and where can we get the jobs to bring people out of poverty? The unemployment situation and also the generational people following in the jobs that their parents had without being able to get out of the cycle of staying in the same old jobs in the same old towns. What else? Did I cover everything?
Ask if we were rule followers or rule breakers. We kind of broke. But I would say that to question number one, and I don't know that this is actually an emotion, but we were pretty much bewildered and all very much noticed that this was a very much black and white conversation, and there was very little mention at all of our Latino brothers and sisters in this country and none at all of our Native American forebears here. That was, we thought, pretty clear.
We didn't know the rules either, so well, okay, these are the feelings that came up out of our group. How important the topic is, the difference between the three speakers that they left hanging in order to stress what they did agree on. We felt puzzled, and this is usually just one person speaking at a time, about whether the problem of race was worse now than it was before. We were overwhelmed about racism. It almost feels impossible to make changes. The rationality spoke to us. The prejudice that not like me, that we've been indoctrinated. We felt challenged. We felt presently lacking, hopeful for the future. We felt tired. And I suspect that was more than one of us. It seems to be such a big problem trying to get back to make changes. We felt affirmed in some of our own thinking about the direction of our society, and that we need to offer our confession and repent. We're glad that there are speakers like these, and there are listeners like ourselves, and all the others around the country, and that all isms are playing together into our biases. Not well organized.
Thank you very much.
Mark Francis?
Okay, so there was a question.
Repentant.
Yeah. So there was a question too, which was more a question that you would have that this stimulated. Although it was a bit of an artificial distinction that we found. But if you have things that you did not report first, Peggy, you should just say those, right, for question two. You have some stuff on that.
Okay. Listening to the speakers made me question, how can I respond to those who don't see that there's a problem? Should I continue to be a do-gooder or concentrate on a systematic change? That we had a lot of conversation about that, some of which came down to the fact that we all can't do the same things. You know, we're all different parts of the body. And so some of us can do big things, and some of us, but all of us can do little things. And sometimes it's as he's talked about the buckshot, it's without all the little things, the big things don't have anything to stand on. And so that's what we came down in that. What we wanted to do was look within ourselves and see what little things that we can do. And part of that was being together with other people who would stimulate us to realize, and this is the other question here, is what are my personal benign acts of racism? Because we often don't see those, and we don't see how we're teaching them to our children. Will there ever be an answer? What can we do for the less fortunate?
Looking primarily to right questions. So basically, we were talking about the reality of racism being so huge and being structural and built into the way we as a society do things. And so we're asking the question, how do we confess social sin? It's really hard. We don't seem to do it effectively. And then we look also at racism being power combined with prejudice. And also, there can also be a power chain, it seems. So we're asking ourselves, we talk primarily about white racism because the white race is at the top of the ladder, unfortunately, in all the stuff that's going on. However, if there's another group that is also has power over a group that's below it, it can't on the ladder of things, then it too can be included in the as racist. And so we're just looking at those definitions and asking questions about those, as well as looking at the effects of normative whiteness and so forth.
History. I mentioned a case that I didn't know until about 10 years ago that the largest hanging in history of the U.S. was only 50 miles from my home. But it was not a part of what I learned. It was 38 Indians that were hung. So knowing that history, not that they're going to wallow in it, but we should know it from the victim's perspective. And so it's to be open to it, but then to talk about, so where do we go now? Now that we know these things happen, how does that change how we go forward? The other thing we talked a little bit about was making the invisible visible. For example, I learned recently that there are about 40,000 Native Americans in Portland. I don't know how many of them any of us have seen when we've been in Portland. I'm curious how many Native Americans there are in Bend or in the river where I live. I know that I'm just beginning to see them. They are they're doing lots of the serving, but how do, and Latinas, we tend to see our own time. So if we want to know who else is there, we need to really do it.
Anything else we want to add here that I didn't capture? I'll read them. Because maybe it's kind of light. The first one is the discussion that Peggy mentioned. Do you just do good yourself versus work on systematic change? Am I a racist? An uncomfortable thing, but how do we help the less fortunate? How do we confess social sins? The effects of racism that are so multifaceted that it's not just a black-white thing, it's within social class, it's within religions, it's somehow human nature always wants to put somebody else below you, and it's deep. The importance of knowing history and therefore learning how and where we want to move forward to, and making the invisible visible. We had a pretty big discussion at our table about this, how even in Bend we have a big homeless population, we have a large Hispanic population, but they hang out at different places than where we do. They're not at the same grocery stores that we go to. They have different pockets that they hang in, so we don't see them or think about them.
I would like to see or suggest that the word repentance be added to this side also.
Okay?
With a question mark.
What word?
Repentance.
Repentance.
Good question.
And so we actually, I think, have an advantage being in faith communities to be able to do that, and maybe we need mechanisms for doing this.
On? Yes. Okay. I have a quiet voice, so when I yell, it sounds like I'm mad. So, I guess, trying to follow the format, listening to the speaker made me question my own personal dichotomy going on, which was, there's a lot of defensiveness, and that defensiveness comes both from my internal community myself, that I defend myself against my own community a lot. And seems to be my journey is going to be 7 years of whatever it is I'm supposed to be learning. And then from the broader community also. So then I look at okay, so you have two parts of yourself, being defensive and then being open. So my experience is kind of walking through life, both, like having a defense but trying to be open. So it's a lot of work, to live like that. And so the whole question about then you work on yourself or you work on the system, the system. So my formal training is in systems and organizations. So I have tended to, kind of disconnect. Somebody else used a better word earlier. You kind of separate yourself. So I use that as a way to look at the system and make the system better. Use my education to do that at the expense of me personally sometimes. That I'm not really looking at myself and my own health and my own happiness and all of that. So again, it's another dichotomy that I constantly work on. And yesterday I had the experience of the two worlds coming together. And and I'm hopeful that my 7-year journey of whatever I'm on and defending myself against my own community may be coming to an end. I don't know. But we completed a class yesterday that I facilitated for. We graduated 16 American Indian job seekers in our area in an Employment Life Skills Academy training. And so all of the things that I have had to endure, I was able to use all that somehow to empower those 16 people. And so it just felt like it came together. The systems change. When we had one of our executive managers of the tribe that came to do a keynote, and she saw the systems part, and she was able to say how we need to put in place now some of the other pieces to support these folks in becoming employed and to do all that. So I didn't have to do that work that day. She did it for me. She talked about it and she could see it. So for me, it was a day of working on myself and then all the challenges these people go through in their lives that I was able to give them hope, stay with them in their pain, and have the wisdom to have assistant trainers there that also were with them in their pain, so that it wasn't just in the past where they felt bad and then maybe didn't come back because they felt bad. That we actually had people there to work with them, as we worked through the process of, how do you get yourself back into the workforce. And so I just wanted to share that this coming here today is a good thing for me to get to reflect on, my journey and how I work with all of this on a daily basis. And I shared with my group that in a way way, it's kind of job security for me too, because most of the tribal people are not willing, to come out and have these conversations in the open community. And so I do, and I go to different groups and I participate with them and try to learn and understand what can I do to, work with people better. That we need to do that because we have definitely, wanted to isolate ourselves away from, other people. So we're starting to do more integration now, but it's gonna take some time. So thank you for putting this on today. I appreciate being here. Thanks for inviting me.
But I had a very strong reaction to this last group of presenters. The moderator never called on the Native American woman. He never called on her, not once. He ignored her. And in fact, the only way she got to speak was to find a place where her voice would fit. And in this context, I just found that appalling. That's a judging word on my part. It was upsetting to me. And that sparked the beginning of our conversations, which rambled all over the place. I mean, we talked about families and the relationships in families and how often they can break, and how that seems to cross cultures and all kinds of things. It crosses all the divisions. And we also talked about a relationship to the land. And the fact that most of where we are, the only reason we're here is because of conquest. We weren't invited here. And that is part of not only us, but it's also part of the DNA of the land. That I think is just something that we need to think about. And maybe we forget to revere what's under our feet, what's in front of our eyes as we look out on all the beauty that we are blessed with here. Jump in, group.
The only thing I was going to add is the resolution that was passed in 2014 at the convention.
Right.
Which charges us with learning the relationship to people whose land this was.
The resident, and I was not at that convention, but from what I remember and having read about, the resolution called on all of the Episcopal churches in the diocese to study the people groups who inhabited the land on which we live and worship, and to have those kind of tough conversations about the reality of that, and to try to learn more of the story. How did it happen? Who was here? Might we find some common ground to have conversation with people from those tribes or people groups? So that's.
We were kind of struck by the.
Here's the microphone.
We were quite struck. Somebody said in the beginning by the Japanese speaker who told those stories, and we expanded on some of those stories. This has to do with about the visibility or invisibility, different kinds of groups. We then went on to discuss the question number 2 about how churches perpetuate systems of racism. And I think that the answer most simply was by sort of being brick and mortar churches with belief systems, lots of jokes about each other's congregations, Episcopalians have Unitarian jokes, I'm sure they have some about somebody else. So we were reacting to the speaker who talked a great deal about don't anymore get this idea about how you can prove what a wonderful group you are and invite them in. We did discuss actually some aspects of how to try to do that. trying to figure out what it would be to go out, as the speaker was saying. And this is a perfectly good example, especially if it's related to your local community. I mean, this is a kind of, that sounds to me like a perfectly great project. I mean, of the kind of way in which churches should exhibit their ministry by their willingness to learn about the history and the place that they're in, instead of having it as a kind of empty, so-called empty land myth. Right? Countries that have empty land mythologies are historically troubled. And those were some of the themes. Were there some of the others in that?
You talked about the movement or the movement toward interfaith dialogue and worshiping together and how it seems to be spreading more and more and more. And we talked about Diana Butler Bass's book. No,
Which one?
the I don't know. But where she spoke about and I left the Roman Catholic Church and worked in that community on the RCIA process, the way adults came into the church. And we taught them what we believed. We showed them how to behave with our soup kitchens and this and that. And then we finally said, now you fully belong. And Diana Butler Bass says, bring them in. They belong fully. They're fully one of you. They will behave a certain way because they've seen you behave that way. And then they will behave themselves into believing a certain thing. The other way automatically perpetuates racism because it says, this is the right way. And no matter, the Episcopal Church is very intellectual and very free, but we still have a certain way to be. So we still have work to do there too.
I'm still kind of learning about that. Our little group went through the 3 questions. How is historical systemic racism evident in our community today? In Oregon, if you're not here legally, you can't get a driver's license. And if you don't have a driver's license, you can't get a checking account. And if you don't have a checking account, you can't get a mortgage. And though all your children may be American citizens, the whole family is tied up in all those things that happen at a systemic government level. And then that's compounded with borders. Because not all states have those rules. We have the rule about the driver's license. I don't know if Washington does. I think California doesn't. So borders really make a difference for states. There's borders for counties, neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods were, the ghettos, the bad neighborhoods. And finally, when the property values got so low, they became gentrified because now people could afford to move in. But the whole sense of borders is a problem. I also raised that there's a lot of bias against disabled persons. And it's a big deal in them. How does the church perpetuate racism? The number one thing that we came up with was silence. We ignore the problem, we don't speak out about the problem, and if anybody questions us about it, we get defensive because we're so good. It was Red brought up that in some communities there's actually, where was it, Oakland? There's a black Episcopal church and there's a white Episcopal church. All in the same, now Oakland's a pretty big city, but still. What duty do we have to speak out in our attempt to disrupt these systems? Go out into the community, jump out into the community, put ourselves out there. We've done, because we're so good, we've done one really big great thing, and Bishop Curry is a black speaker for the head of our church, who's a very dynamic man. But the question is, where are the young people? How do we make those connections with young people?
They're at camp. They're at camp.
Okay. Well then,
They were at General Convention
that's good.
in other places, and I'll tell you, it was exciting to see
Well-
them, and they're enthusiastic and articulate, and we put some money where our mouth is at this last convention.
Oh, that's good.
You can't read it?
For me, is supporting the status quo. And, you know, I think we've done enough of that for long enough. And I mean, personally, I just feel very, very strongly that I need to get out there and do things because that's what Jesus did. He spent his life doing it, and I claim to want to follow him. And one of the things we mentioned in our group also is the possibility of hooking up with one of these community organizing groups that was mentioned by one of the speakers, because they can be very effective ways to get the congregation out there and working on things that people care about.
I'm a member of the Let's Talk Diversity Coalition in Jefferson County, which started about 8 years ago. I've only been involved for about a year. But one of the most wonderful things that this coalition does is 4 times a year they do diversity trainings. And when they're held in Jefferson County, they are no charge. And it's a very lovely day with a breakfast like we had this morning and a nice lunch. The next one, which is part 1, it's the foundational piece for all of the others, is to be held on February 25th, and it is going to be held at the United Methodist Church in Madras, which is right across from the hospital. I have a flyer with the dates and times of all of the trainings that are going to be held this year. And Betsy, I'd like to get your email address, and I can send this to you electronically, and you could perhaps get it out to folks at Trinity. And this part 1 is called Diversity and Cultural Competency. I found when I took this one, I am really culturally incompetent. And that was a terrible thing to have to face, but it was the truth. So the things that are essentially covered, and I have to say the presenters are Native American. They are bright, they are credentialed, they are loving in their approach. I mean, nothing is presented as if we should be ashamed, but it is presented as we need to confront.
And I just wanted to add that I've done lots of stuff around diversity. This, to me, was the most powerful because it's so experiential. So it's not just talk.
And it's diverse.
Right.
You know, it's diverse. So you're going to meet people who don't look like you.
Okay. But read the copy of the second one, because I think that's
The second one is welcoming environments. But the first one covers consider your own culture and how it began or developed. Identify where you are in your journey towards cultural competency. Discuss common barriers to understanding cultures that are different from your own. These are some of the things we've been grappling with here today. How do we have those conversations? They help facilitate those. And then learn tools for creating awareness in your personal, professional, and organizational life. So I highly, highly recommend it. If you can possibly be there, do. If not, it will be offered again. So I'll get this information to you.
On the back from Lenny, who is the producer, the keeper of the keys to the film, it is no longer available. There's nothing we can do about that except apologize and let them know they should have told partner sites. Tomorrow is one more presentation and discussion, and then to continue this conversation a little bit about what are we going to do from here? What are we going to commit ourselves to do as individuals or as a group if it happened that way? But so I would think a little bit more about that tonight if you could.
We've zeroed in on a couple things. One of which is the homeless community.
And what we decided to do as a group was that we want to establish a book club. And to, we are going to, after I get back from Nicaragua, we're going to meet, the 5 of us, and we're going to put together an action plan that will start a book club that will invite Population and Family Kitchen to join several of us in discussing a book. And there were a lot of things we talked about in terms of how we might make this happen. But it was all kind of general stuff, and so we're going to have to put together a plan when we get back. The second issue that we talked about, I don't know how far we've gotten with this, but that was that what does our church do to reach out to the Hispanic community? And what might we do there? And we didn't get into a lot of details with that, but it's something that's on our mind and that we may, as when the 5 of us get together, put some more energy into that. Things like our welcoming packet. Could it be in Spanish? And there were other ideas about how we might be able to get that information out to the Spanish-speaking community.
Point of information, what is the church's connection to the Family Kitchen?
Our church?
It's downstairs, right?
Yeah, this is Trinity Episcopal Church, and Family Kitchen is there. So,
does the church run it?
Yeah.
this is what?
The church runs it?
But many other,
It's a trustee relationship with Trinity Episcopal Church. So there's a board of trustees that is accountable to the vestry of Trinity Episcopal Church.
Oh.
but many.
So there's a formal written relationship between Family Kitchen and Trinity Episcopal Church.
And other churches in town also.
Right. It's not just, yeah.
So it's interdenominational?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah. But the formal relationship is a trustee relationship with Trinity.
Created essentially by Trinity in the beginning.
And the board of trustees is accountable to the vestry of Trinity Episcopal Church.
So I will report and ask my fellow panelists, people who were at our table, that we also brought up the question of the Hispanic community. That came up in ours, and we had a couple of ideas. Does anybody want to say what some of those ideas were?
Well, I was saying that in 2013 at the Diocesan Convention, we talked about the Latino ministry and welcoming of the Hispanics or Latinas. And one of the things we thought about, and we heard presentations about, was something in our liturgies instead of waiting for them to come and say, well, now we're 20% of your community, can we have a song on Sunday? Instead of waiting for that, begin to teach the community, English speaking or whatever, begin to teach the community some music or somehow put some things in our liturgy that says, we welcome you, we want you to join us, and we will learn more about you as we go along.
The idea I put on without knowing anything about it in this community is because the relative invisibility of the Latino community, there must be a need for lots of very elementary social services that are like volunteering, like helping after school kids with their homework and learning how to read, or empowering the kids to help translate, teaching them how to help grandma negotiate the system. And there's lots of things that people with time on their hands, technically like us, can do for that. The only thing that I don't understand is, I'm sure that there are communities, the Catholic Church, various kinds of organizations that know about this. We probably have to make contact with them and learn what we're doing.
I know Betsy knows what I'm saying, but one of the things that is happening in Bend is that the Latino community is feeling somewhat dispossessed by the Roman Catholic Church. The churches in Oregon is extremely conservative and doesn't recognize family planning, doesn't recognize some of the things that are very big parts of their lives. And so they're feeling somewhat dispossessed. But they're not necessarily going anywhere. So one of the things along with what David is saying is that, or we thought of or mentioned, is that perhaps we could do some of these, like teaching English or some of these other things at the Boys and Girls Club, where the young people gather. I wish we had been as positive as Rick and said we're going to meet again. But we thought about that, and we have to think about how we're going to make those thoughts become real.
The one thing the additional thing that we did in order to make this actually happen is that Donna is going to, been given the responsibility to get us all together once I get back to Nicaragua. So we're serious about at least the book club.
Okay, some other questions.
Yeah.
Oh, about the book club. I have this idea because they do this in Madison, Wisconsin, and maybe a couple of other communities. But they have book club for the homeless people, and they give ways of getting a little group of books together, and the books are chosen according to, because a lot of the homeless people read, and it would be a wonderful way for us and the homeless people to get together and talk about ideas and what they're reading, and so I think it would be a really valuable way. So I'm going to get in touch with my sister-in-law to see how they do this in Madison, and then I'll let my group know.
Think about what would happen if we read Punish with them. The book you spoke about, it's like the boy, the conversation. They might not be ready to
Well, we all have to be ready.
I know. You're right.
Just as a follow-up on the homeless issue, there is I think it's Summit High School, there are maybe 100 homeless teenagers going to school there. I'm part of another nonprofit called FAN, Family Access Network, and FAN has kind of social work type people in each school all around here. I mean, the Van Lapine School District, they have them in Sisters, they're moving to Bryanville, they have them in Redmond, and this other charity that I'm a part of raises money to help families in need in this local area. And those Family Access Network advocates have told us about the number of homeless youth that are couch surfing from one friend to another. It's a big problem, and because they're underage, they kind of have fallen through the cracks of more established social service networks that are out there. Maybe some of them come to Family Kitchen. I've kind of looked when I've been there serving, because there are some young people who come in there.
There are many congregating every night.
Yeah.
Remember, everybody can talk.
Action plan mode, but more reacting to the things that we heard and talking in specific and general. Joe shared some information about the military, and it was just a review of what we saw this morning.
We did some of that.
Yeah, but I have to honestly say that I didn't form an action plan how to accomplish all this. But we'll think about it.
Perhaps we could make contact with some of the nearby public schools and find out about children who are homeless. I'm sorry. Indeed, whatever we could work with them on.
I would be happy to volunteer for that, because I have a lot of contacts through this other charity that I'm involved with. So I work with the Family Access Network advocates, and they're in the schools in order, their philosophy is that children at risk and with problems at home don't learn. And so they try and bring to bear combinations of services to help those families so that ultimately the children can learn when they come to school. Hungry kids don't learn, homeless kids don't learn. If the parents are sick or there's drug issues or bad things happening in the home, children don't learn. So their presence is to help children learn by addressing those issues that happen outside of school.
One thing we did talk about is the Boys and Girls Club next door, and how when Professor Douglas was talking about stepping out or jumping into the ditch, how you just step out across the street and make a connection there and volunteer. And I'm going to take that to heart in the Dallas, and because the after-school program has been struggling there to find not only people to run the program, but ways to make that after-school program more accessible to people who are outlying areas, especially people, Native people in the community of Salado, 12 miles out. So, yeah, I think that might be an action step that I might be willing to
Here in
jump in the
Bend,
ditch
Paul
with.
Morton is very involved with, has been very involved with our boys.
See a member of a
He's a priest. He was
One of the things that encourages me in this discussion that we've had is often I've been in places where we discuss the problem, and we discuss the problem in our group too. But then, because we had such a focused discussion later, we went to the steps, and the idea of going past the problem, because the problems are huge and everywhere you look, and the first thing you start to say is, well, what can we do about it? Well, it's so big, and we'd like to have more Latinos come to church, but how do we do that? We actually said, well, what can we do? And what we can do seems very small. You may shake your head and say, well, what's a book club? But the idea is it's a way of having conversation with homeless people where they feel respected and on the same level as we are. Well, what good does it do to translate the welcoming packet into Spanish when nobody's there to read it? Well, it's the same thing as the music. If somebody comes in the door, you're prepared, and maybe when we identify where the Latinous people are, and we can offer the booklet to them and see whether or not they even want to come check us out, kind of thing. So they're small steps, but I think that's where we have to begin. I think that the mistake that we often make is trying to do something too big and falling on our face because we haven't built the stairway up to that. And so I'm really encouraged by the idea that there is something that we can do.
I like that statement. We built the stairway.
Two speakers said that yesterday and today.
As Ed said, our group really didn't talk about next steps that much. But I had three ideas that just kind of were occurring to me, especially as you all were speaking. One being in regard to working with homeless people. I've been concerned for a long time that we have AA groups meeting across the street and we have Family Kitchen downstairs. And we've done nothing to reach out to either of these groups of people. And what I was thinking of was back to the 80s when I was involved with what we call rap groups, which had nothing to do with what we think of as rap now. But, and we had rap groups with homeless people at the local parish there in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. And that was just wonderful. And it was, because I was trying to picture inviting homeless people to Trinity. And, you know, we have Tommy as our token homeless person who's hardly ever around anymore. But people haven't been coming from Family Kitchen. And I don't even know that they're welcome. So they feel that they're welcome. So I think a couple of things. One would be to have a sign that you're welcome to come to services, and when they are, that sort of thing. And the other would be, and that would be both at Family Kitchen and in the other room. Well, no, it's not proselytizing. It's just saying you're welcome to come if you wish. Other churches could post their messages too if they wanted to, as long as they weren't proselytizing. But you know, something to show people that they're welcome. And then I was thinking, what would be a substitute for going to church for people coming to Family Kitchen? And I was thinking maybe it would be something like a rap group that would meet one day a week after a meal was served or something of that sort, where people can just sit and talk about what's on their mind. And maybe you can bring in some spiritual stuff, but it would not be sectarian kind of thing. So that's one thing. And I can see somebody who might be interested in responding. I wanted to just mention briefly these other two things. The other thing was the Latino community. I think in order to attract people from the Latino community, we have to have somebody here who is able to welcome them, not just a booklet or a song. I think Jed would be capable of doing worship things that would make them feel more at home than they would at present. But I also think that we need a person on staff or who's a full-time volunteer with the capability of dedicating time who speaks Spanish to, and preferably is bicultural. I mean, super preference, like 400% preference that it be a bicultural person who is here to welcome people and make them feel at home. I think that would be a great thing to do. And then the third thing I wanted to mention was also what was alluded to over the weekend by the speakers with community organizing. And it isn't just to do community organizing, but they were talking about getting out of, and not expecting people to come to you, but to go out to be with the people. And there are models for parish ministry that are much more centered in that direction. And that I've learned, for example, with the IAF was sort of the last one that people alluded to of the different community national community organization groups. And so I've had some training with them and have derived a lot of good stuff that I'd be very happy to share with the parish on that. And if we liked the whole idea of community organizing, we could maybe explore joining one of these national organizations that promotes community organizing. I saw Red looking very eager back there.
I just wanted to say, Betsy, that I brought your name up as a person who's already doing the going out into the Hispanic community, and I think it would be great if we had somebody who could be around full time who spoke Spanish. But that's one of these big things again. We have you who speak Spanish, we have other people who speak Spanish, maybe not where you'd be around a full time, but where you have contact, and those are the kinds of things that we can do now and build upon.
I think an important small step that we would have to invest a lot of discussion with our vestry and our people. A small step is that I've gotten to know Greg Delgado a little bit, not nearly like Betsy does. But a small step is they're always looking for a place to gather, to meet. I don't mean 200, I mean to meet. And right now, because of finances, I think it'd be absolutely wonderful to be a home for them, to gather for the people he's working with, because he's a community organizer. To ask the vestry to invite them in and not charge rent right now. And we're moving the other way, to tell you the truth. We're moving towards renting for everything. And I understand financially, but I still say ministry is ministry, and we might have to look at how else to finance some of it. But there are small things like that, I think, too.
Gail, you and I need to go.
There's a lot of ideas percolating here, but just the idea of rap group clicked with me. Why not a real rap group? Why not a poetry slam? I'm thinking maybe we could do that in the Dells. I've talked to younger people, you know, working in the bank or working in the gas station, say, you know, of that age, 20 to 50. So how do you like living in the Dells? It's boring. As soon as I get enough, I'm moving out of here, kind of thing. Young people, yeah, one thing to do is have something to do.
And, you know, I keep tossing in these things, but yesterday a new rap song was released by a white rapper. The name of the song is White Privilege. So the discussion is not staying among the 16s. Yeah, and it is incredibly true and right pointed.
I just wanted to make sure. Has everybody said something?
I'll stop talking.
Everybody said something?
I can't speak for St. Mark's because I know we're already involved in several things, homeless shelter and other things. But one of the things I started doing when I had to do something, when the grand jury came down in February with no punishment for the Trayvon Martin killing. So I have a friend who taught for 23 years at Oregon State University. She taught philosophy. And while she was there, she stood with Women in Black. I don't know if you know that network. The network started in 1989 in Israel when Israeli women, fed up with what the government was doing in the territories to the Palestinians, started standing for peace and to end the occupation. But since then, women around the world have begun to stand. And what you do is you choose a time and place and stand once a week. So whenever I'm in town on Friday from 12 to 1, a few of us stand at the intersection of 10th and 5th. I mean, Oak and 5th, in Hood River, a very public place. We hold a sign that says we're justice for peace. And it says a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing. It includes words like, we stand in silence because there are no words to communicate the way we feel about the violence and the killing. We stand in black to mourn those whose lives have been lost or disrupted by violence. Anyway, there are 5 statements. But, so we've been standing now since February 13th, and every Friday. We did not stand on Christmas Day. We did stand on New Year's Day, but it was so cold. It was, I think, I don't know, in the 20s. After half an hour, we said, okay, we're done for today. But in rain and sun, whatever. But Patty Browning, who I'm sure a lot of you know, Bishop Browning's wife, when she saw us standing, she came up to me later and she said, thank you so much. She used to stand in Tel Aviv, and she talked to me about some of what she dealt with there. But mostly we get people saying namaste, or thumbs up, or the peace sign, or sometimes we've gotten hugs, but mostly people say thank you. And for me, it's both a standing meditation and a time to just, even for a few minutes, to stop people and make them think different thoughts. So it's a little bit disruptive. So if you're interested, you can go to www.womeninblack.org to learn more.
In keeping with what appeared to have been the emphasis that the Institute was trying to bring to us on racism and inequities, it seems that, to me, that what we are attempting to do is to respond to the problems that have been created historically. I thought that Kelly Brown reminded all of us the historical context in which we are trying to deal with. And as I have said repeatedly, that my faith is in the future, that we have fresh minds to look at these problems and come up with fresh ideas and attitudes toward one another. So I would applaud the institute that we have listened to remind us of the challenges that we have ahead of us.
The love of God, the peace of Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all. So come and follow Jesus, you who have committed yourselves already, and you who would like to do so for the first time. You who have given yourselves to the care of creation and to the suffering ones of the world. And you who feel moved by the Spirit to begin to offer yourselves. You who have been faithful in your life commitments, and you who have failed. Come, for our Lord invites us to follow him, now to make new beginnings in our lives. Loving God, you have led us to this place, not to shield us from heartache and the pain of human life, but to heal us and inspire us, to gently redirect us till we see the world as you do and love it with your love. Amen. Just one reminder. Before you start to march, meditate on the life and teachings of Jesus. And so now we're going to hear some of those words of Jesus. We'll just go around one at a time. Hear now the words of Jesus spoken to each one of us. Jesus says,
My peace I give to you.
Do not be afraid.
I call you my friend.
Thine is my love.
Even the hairs of your head are numbered. Follow me.
I am the way for you.
I am the truth for you.
Blessed are your eyes when they see.
You are my witness.
You are my brother.
I am hungry, give me food.
I am in prison, come to me.
I am thirsty, give me drink.
I am a stranger, welcome me.
I am naked, clothe me.
I am sick, visit me.
Abide in me, and I in you.
I will drink wine with you in the kingdom of God.
You will shine like the sun.
You are in me, and I in you.
Ask, and it will be given you.
Seek, and you will find.
Knock, and the door will be opened to you.
I am the vine. You are the branch.
I will give you rest.
You are the light of the world.
You are the salt of the earth.
You are my sister.
You are my brother.
Give, and it will be given to you.
Love others as I have loved you.
The truth will make you free.
Feed my sheep.
Watch and pray.
I am with you always.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
O Trinity of love, God in community, holy in one, look now on us who look to you.
And
hear our prayer for our community.
Where there is falseness,
Smothered by your truth.
where there is any coldness,
Kindle the flame of your love.
where there is joy and hope,
Free us to share it together.
and make us one.
As you are one.
And for what else shall we pray?
those who are alone or ill.
We believe God's presence in the darkness before dawn.
In the way
Waiting of uncertainty. Where fear and courage join hands. Conflict and care in arms. And the sun rises over barbed wire. We believe in the with us God, who sits down in our midst to share our humanity. We affirm the faith that takes us beyond the safe place, into action, into vulnerability, and into the streets. We commit ourselves to work for change and put ourselves on the line, to bear responsibility, to take risks, live powerfully, and face humiliation, to stand with those on the edge, to choose life, and to be used by the Spirit for God's new community of hope. Amen. Just refrain. There is a balm in Gilead to make the broken whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Look at your hands. See the touch and the tenderness. God's own for the world. Look at your feet. See the path and the direction. God's own for the world. Look at your heart. See the fire and the love. God's own for the world. Look at the cross. See God's Son and our leader.